Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of But Why Though Reviews. I'm Kate and I'm here with Matt.
Hello.
And we just did South by Southwest. There we got to watch a whole bunch of movies, and today we're going to talk about One Monkey Man. It's Dev Patel's directorial debut. And not only that, he directed it, wrote it, and starred in it. Matt, we can just go ahead and start with our expectations before I get into the synopsis.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I saw the trailer, I was excited. I wasn't quite on board with everybody's whole this is just Dave Chappelle, John Wick, but I was expecting some, action revenge type thriller based on what we got.
Yeah. Also, like, I didn't get John Wick from the trailer at all, but we know that that's Americans' only shorthand for any action film ever because it's the only one that exists here, apparently. But I was really excited from the actual fights that we saw in the trailer because you could tell that Dev Patel has training as a fighter, which I was really excited for. And he looks really good in suits, and red and purple are his colors. So, from there, let's go ahead and jump into the synopsis. A young man ekes out a meager living in an underground fight club where night after night, wearing a gorilla mask, he's beaten bloody by more popular fighters for cash. After years of suppressed rage, he discovers a way to infiltrate the enclave of the city's sinister elite. As his childhood trauma boils over, his mysteriously scarred hands unleash an explosive campaign of retribution to settle the score with the men who took everything from him. Matt, let's start with what worked. What worked for you?
The action did work.
Yes.
I thought the action was actually very well done. I mean, I guess when the action sequence is happening, the pacing and how it's filmed and shot is very well done. Um, so that works right off the bat. So I guess if you're going from that standpoint of like, can Dave Chappelle be an action star? I'm like, yes, yes, he can.
Dev Patel.
Yeah,
Yes,
my bad.
yeah. I was like, yes, no. I think that that is one of the things that's really clear. I agree. The action worked for me as well. I think what sucks from the American perspective of people thinking that it's just going to be John Wick is that you can tell Dev Patel has a reverence for the action genre from East and South Asia. There is a lot of references to Timo's work, like The Night Comes for Us, and the large industry of Indonesia cinema. But there's actually some moments that remind me of Tony Jaa in The Protector as well. And then of course you have some notable homage moments to The Man from Nowhere and Korean revenge cinema, where I would actually argue most of the high profile violence in the film is kind of one for one what you see in Korean cinema, which I think is really exciting because
Yes.
I think that you can, like, when the action is happening, you can tell that Dev is a student of action, not just from a film perspective, but from a fan perspective as well. And I think that that's how you tell a good story. And to bring up John Wick, that's why John Wick works the way it does, because Chad Stileski is also a student of action and has a great reference for the medium itself. So I agree. I think Dev's acting in general is also another thing that works. Like the man gives face very well. Like there are a lot of moments where you can tell that he's just boiling with rage, but he's not saying anything. And I love actors who can, like, do a bunch by saying nothing.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously he by far, I mean, it's clearly he is the main focal point of this movie, and it really showcases that he's the main focal point of this movie. I honestly don't know if there's really any other character that really stands out at all in this movie. They're kind of there and moving, and
Yeah.
you could say some of them kind of, I don't even want to say shine, but they're there. But like, this is definitely his movie and he
It's
is the leading star of this movie.
Yeah, it's almost like they're all fodder for him almost. Like everybody exists to to just have the crap beat out of them by
Yeah,
him.
pretty much.
Which I mean, like, that's not terrible. Like that's it's a good film. I think one of the things that I also really appreciated, although I know that there is some differences on, like, the thoughts of it, is I liked the way that the main villain isn't necessarily religion, but the way people use it as a cudgel against people. And I also thought there's a section of the film where you get to see these really dope female fighters that come out, and I was like, okay, all on board. Third act, without giving any spoilers, goes hard. And everybody gets their due, I guess is the best way to say that.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, I mean, I think who you're referencing, I do think they get their due. And I think that third act is very good. I also think it takes a little while to get to the third act, to be completely
Yes,
honest. I
which
think,
goes to the what doesn't work.
yeah, no, I think the pacing of this movie is very off. I think
Yeah.
the first act kind of builds up nicely and it kind of gives you a nice little payoff per se. The
Hmm.
second act, I said ass, but second act, is ass, exists, and kind of drags on quite often. And then we get back, and then all of a sudden it remembers, and then it kind of like, oh yeah, now we remember what we are. And then the
Yeah.
third act just takes off, and you're like, oh wow, yeah, I remember why I like this movie. But it's just very on off.
Yeah, he has also oddly enough a film I don't see referenced a lot, but Mission Impossible Fallout, there is a very strong reference in it that I think is real good. But I think to your point, I gave the film a really high score when it came out. I think I gave it, or when not when it came out, when I first saw it, like walking out on the high, I gave it like an 8.5. And I think the longer I've sat with it, the more I wish that Dev hadn't held everybody's hands as much as he did in that second act. I think that second act is a lot of really heavy exposition because you can tell that he's making an Indian film for non-Indian audiences, so he feels like he has to over explain himself. And I think that that's where stuff just gets missed and lost. No pun intended in translation, in what he's doing. And I think if he had just done first act, very small a second act, and then just went ramped right back up into act three, it would have been a much stronger film. That being said, I think that this is a stumble that you can expect from a feature debut. Like as a screenwriter or as a director, that pacing element is something that I can easily see being kind of the pitfall when you're just getting into direction, and especially balancing heavy action with smaller moments.
I think for me, it's just been hard because I think as I've sat on this movie, it's kind of really kind of that second act is really kind of really weighed on my
Yeah.
opinion of this movie because I don't think I understand, like you said, of what he was going for, and I don't think it's all necessarily bad. It's also just way too long, way too drawn out. Way some parts even feel completely unnecessary. That it's just like, yo, you could have cut this down by half and have been a lot better. And I think I'm not, like I said, I don't think this because of that we just, I don't want any more Dev Patel. No, I think from this film I'm solidified of
Keep
like, look,
giving this man money,
yeah,
please.
give him money, let him be an action star. I'm okay with it. Call
Yeah.
Tom up if like you mentioned, he can go be one of the Mission Impossible. I don't really care. Like from what I got from him, I'm excited for him to do more.
Yeah.
But overall, that whole part just really kills that entire, not the entire movie, but most of the movie for me. That like
Yeah.
I personally do not really want to rewatch this movie because I think that whole part it's just too damn
And
long.
I think it kind of I think what got it for me, because one, I think the issue with the second act, which I already said, but I think the other issue is the pacing in the first and third acts are very similar to pacing that you see in the films that he's referencing, like The Night Comes for Us or The Raid. Like it starts slow and then it builds, but once it builds, it doesn't stop. Like it doesn't stop until the end tragically happens, and that's that stop point. And so I feel like there's a constant ramping up, but instead of ramping up over like consistently, it falls and then has to ramp back up again. And it does it quickly, but it's hard. And I think if you
I think it just
come
it falls too far. Like
yeah,
I think
no, I
you can
agree.
allow it to fall, but he lets it just bottom out all the way to
Yeah.
the bottom. And obviously that feels honestly that feels like a choice the
Yes,
way he
it
does
is
it,
purposeful.
but I don't think it was a good choice.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that the biggest issue for me too, so and I found this out from one of our writers, Prabhat Bains, he reviewed a film out of TIFF called Kill, which I had the chance to see at Fantastic Fest. It's directed by Nikhil Nagesh Bhatt. And that film, it is it's on a train, and the first 20 minutes is a slow setup, and then the next hour and a half is nonstop bloodshed and action and intense humor, and I think to compare it, and the reason I'm comparing the two is because as India has a lot of action films, they have a lot of action epics. They don't have a lot of the high octane, really gruesome, really brutal, violent action films or revenge thrillers that we get out of East Asia, like out of Korea, Japan, stuff like that. But Kill is the one that I think goes one to one with Monkey Man, but I think it edges it out because it has a much more clear vision of not letting the audience fall down. But like you said, I give Dev Patel all the money. How can I give him all the money? Because he deserves it. That much I do think is clear. I think for a first outing, it has its growing pains, but ultimately, I want to see what he can do in the action space. And I think if he's given the leeway and the freedom to build his stories, he'll be able to knock it out of the park once he's a more confident director.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I'm with you of like I don't think we should I think the first act ends up ramping very well that I don't understand the fall off that we took.
Yeah.
And I think the third act ramps it really bad. And I think the third act is phenomenal. Like I would want people just to go watch it at least once just to see the third act of this
Yeah.
movie and everything else. But to get there, it's
It's
somewhat of a
weird because
climb.
so it is weird because I feel like the first act and the third act are almost self-contained stories, and
Yes.
that second act doesn't bridge it well enough.
It
And I
doesn't even
think
feel
that
like it's
that's the
part of the
issue.
movie in some
Yeah,
ways.
it
That's
is
why it's
so
just weird.
tonally it's different.
Yeah, it's totally different. And I'm like, why is this all here? I get it, but like,
Yeah.
what are we doing, man?
Yeah. I agree. But that being said, Matt, you said folks should go watch it. Is that your takeaway from the film?
Yeah. I mean, it's better than most of the action movies we get nowadays, anyways. And so I'm just like, especially at least American wise, that why not? Um,
So I think that's
there,
the important thing is for an action film that's going to get a big blockbuster release in the US, this is probably the best that the US is going to get in some time if it's not held but helmed by Stileski. So I think you should watch it. I think what is hard is for Western action films,
look,
it
I've
blows
seen too
everything out of
many.
the
I
water.
know I've seen too many Anthony Mackie action films. Sorry, Anthony Mackie, I like you, but his action films are so
They're
terribly
not
done.
good.
They're not good at all. That I'm like, you know what? This is still better than a lot of what we're gonna get. And
Yeah.
for a directorial and productorial or whatever and
Reduced Toriel.
actorial, every torial there is for him, I think he does a very solid job.
Yeah.
That's obviously not without fault. But no, I think overall it's
I
really
also think what this does is it really pivots him as an actor. Because I think like Green Knight, you get a hint of this like doing weird stuff, but he's kind
yeah.
well, no, no, so I'm not I know
I'm
that
sorry, that
I
movie
know
was a
you
little
had
too far. That movie was a little too far out for me.
you
I was with you,
I
but
get
I was like, I don't know
that.
where we were
I
going.
get that, but it was still Dev Patel establishing him as doing something different and trying to remove him from all of the really high dramas that he had been doing.
The
And I
man
think
carried a
that
cum belt for like 20 years in that movie. I don't know.
he did carry a cum rag for 20 years. Anyway, this is not a Green Knight. This is not a Green Knight podcast. However, I can see the future that he has here. I do. Yeah, I gave it an 8.5. That's what I have to stick with because I put that on Rotten Tomatoes. But I think now in my post third act, like taking off the third act goggles that I wrote that review in, I would probably say it's closer to a 7. Not bad, doesn't, but it doesn't blow me away. And I think that that's what sucks because it's a good movie and I want more. And I think you should watch it. Like I think if you were sitting there and you're on the fence, I do think you should watch it because that third act alone is probably better than the anything that we've gotten in that genre here for a while.
All right. I think the overall story, I mean, I guess before we get to kind of the overall story is kind of we kind of feels very straightforward in a sense. It does get a little muddled depending on how much of I
Yeah,
guess Hindi politics you know, but overall the story seemed like you said pretty kind of in the beginning the main villain whether it's religion or non-religion of power. I mean, it's pretty
yeah.
straightforward simplistic story. That's fine. I overall, I just think the action of what we get for the third act is good. I think when I was came out with like about a 7 or so, maybe give or take between 7 and 8, about
Yeah.
7, where you end up now, about where I was.
Yeah.
Probably still there.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I would recommend if folks, you can obviously read my full written review, which will be down. I think that's how it works, down in the description. I'll link that there. But I would also recommend checking out Siddhant Adlaka's review at IGN because he actually has that perspective into the Indian Hindu politics, like of the film and how like Dev tackles it. Which is a perspective that neither of us can really bring, but I can say he kicks real good. Dev kicks good. And thus I think you should watch it. Matt, where can everybody find you?
Obviously, you can find me at butwhythough.net, and then with all the other lovely people and writers of content that's there. And then I guess I'm on Twitter at datm18, DATTM18.
And you can find me at Oh My Myth on Twitter and everywhere else. And ooh, excuse me.
Really?
That was me saying Twitter and my body being like, that's a hellscape. And you can find all my writing at butwhythough.net. All of our South by coverage is up there. And then, of course, you can go ahead and click the link in this review to see my more elaborated written thoughts on Monkey Man. Like, subscribe, click the little like bell thingy. We're still kind of new to this. Do all the things that you have to do on YouTube to help us be a